I'm good here, right? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
And we are live. It's Dr. J in the house. Today, we're going to be talking about histamine, the hidden truth, what your doctor is not telling you about histamine. I get these questions all the time from patients. Histamine's a really focused upon topic, and people can kind of maybe lose the forest for the trees, so to speak, because they're not looking at it from a root cause perspective. So we're going to just kind of compare, contrast kind of histamine from a conventional medical standpoint, and we'll compare it to a functional medicine standpoint and kind of how we're looking at it. We're going to nuance our perspective, talk about kind of root cause, and help kind of get your guys' perspective more functional medicine, root cause oriented. Hey, Rob, welcome to the podcast, brother. How you doing?
Good. It's great. It's great to be on with you again and chat about this histamine stuff that we're dealing with a lot of patients that we see.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive in. So, what is histamine, right? Histamine is a neurotransmitter, okay? It's really important. It's going to have major impacts and benefits with inflammation, especially acute. Like if you bump your elbow or you work out too hard, like that histamine response is going to be good. It's going to help vasodilate. It's going to help get blood flow in there. Those mast cells are going to create that blood flow. It's going to help with healing. Now, that's acute. Now, the problem with a lot of histamine issues is it can start to become chronic. So you start to have these antigens coming into the playground, right? Antigens are like foreign proteins. So outside of like, let's say an inflammatory stressor, like lifting or doing something active, now it starts to become like foreign things. It could be like foods. It could be like allergens. It could be like mold toxins. It could be like heavy metals. It could be certain like compounds
Fragrances.
like glyphosate. Go ahead.
Yeah, fragrances. I mean, all kinds of things. Chili
Fragrances,
pulses.
scents.
Yep.
Yeah, all those things. And so then what happens is that mast cell, which is essentially a basophil. So basophils in the bloodstream, once they go out of the blood into the tissue, they become mast cells. And there's a receptor on that mast cell where that antigen binds. Okay. And that mast cell then produces histamine. And that histamine does a couple things. It's going to constrict the airways. It's going to potentially create pain or inflammation, right? It's going to vasodilate. And now in an acute response, that's fine because whatever that thing is, your body's going to process it and you're going to move on. It's when it's chronic and it's every day. And now you have the inflammatory sinuses, you have the conjunctivitis or the inflamed eyes, you have the rash on your skin, you have the migraines, you have the itchiness, you have the labored breathing because there's more constriction, you have more tinnitus and ear ringing, you have sinus congestion, you have more abdominal pain and diarrhea. And so that can start to make your life pretty crummy if you don't get to the root cause of why this histamine is so chronic out of the gates.
Yeah, I think that's important. Like histamine, first and foremost, like you're saying in the beginning, it's not necessarily an enemy. It's a natural, it's an essential signaling molecule. Helps
Yep.
with immune defenses, tissue repair, stomach acid production. It's a neurotransmitter of sorts, and it helps to sort of coordinate inflammation. But when we get stuck and when it's chronic and it can't balance, or we get congested, is another term. We start to see congestion issues all over the body, whether it's the anxiety, like you said, or postnasal drip or nasal congestion or cardiovascular. Our body is just sort of in this space of fight or flight almost, in a sense, that can be triggered now from external histamine sources that are going to affect our body's ability to adapt to that.
Correct. I made a little outline here so you can see kind of what histamine is doing here. Can you see it okay, Rob?
Yeah, I got it. We
Right.
got it.
So
Yep.
we have the constriction, we have the eye stuff, we have the mast cells. Now, inflammation, this is kind of what's happening under the skin, right? Literally. So you have all these different chemokines and cytokines and neutrophils. And this is like a normal response. But when the inflammation becomes chronic, when these interleukins and cytokines hang out a lot longer, it's going to create more problems, right? And this is kind of like the inflammatory response. Like this is like an acute, like kind of wound, right? This is where the cytokines are so important for repair and all this and healing. And this is wonderful when we're in this acute state because it helps our body heal, right? Because it's helping with the immune defense. It's helping actually, histamine also helps with stomach acid too. Histamine does
Yep.
stimulate that, right? So the problem isn't histamine itself, it's the breakdown and the overproduction. So, like, the big thing is as the gut becomes more dysfunctional here, we start to lessen our DAO, right? And DAO is made in the brush border of the small intestine, and that actually helps break down histamine. And so we
Yeah.
need certain nutrients to make DAO. We need B6, we need copper, we need vitamin C. So with a crummy diet, we're going to impact some of the nutrients to make it. with the gut bacteria overgrowth, it's going to impact it. And also the low levels of probiotics are also going to impact it. And then let's
Mhm.
say there starts to become more gut permeability here. Well, guess what? Now the immune system is exposed to the outside of the world, because essentially in your gut is actually still outside your body, right? Has to go into these microvilli, into the tight junctions. Now it's inside. And so the more your tight junctions become open, now your immune system starts to become more hyper responsive.
Yeah, 100%. And with a lot of people that I see too, even in terms of like people that have trying to think of the word I'm looking for. They have sort of chronic inflammation issues, or they have they're just sensitive to everything. There's almost always some kind of a gut
Yes.
component there because the DAO production is so low. It cannot produce enough, usually leading to some kind of a dysbiosis or overgrowth or parasitic activity, kinds of things that can happen inside of the gut. And also from a long-standing antibiotic use, like you're talking about, can also inflame and disrupt not only the gut, but then the immuno reactions, which oftentimes we'll even see people with autoimmune conditions that have histamine kind of uh, layers to it as well.
Yeah, you can see, right? Here's your healthy intestine, right? Ulcerative colitis or Crohn's. These are like IBD issues, right? Where there's actual like inflammation. Maybe there's ulcerations. There's like an autoimmune attack, but you could still be in this IBS lane where like you have a lot of constipation, a lot of diarrhea, a lot of spasms, a lot of cramping, maybe like up in the upper stomach area. Maybe you have more acid reflux and gastritis there. And so, like, the more inflamed your gut is, the essentially the more histamine you're going to be producing, right? Because histamine is a neurotransmitter and it's there to help the immune system. It's meant to help with healing. But when there's autoimmunity and it's chronic, that's where the problem really starts to get way out of hand. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, it's multi-layered issue. It starts, it's sort of chicken or the egg, which one starts first or last. But once the gut gets dysbiotic, we get into that space of chronic infection. Then our DAO goes low, meaning our enzyme that breaks down histamine goes low. Therefore, histamine is going to go high inside of our body, and it's going to start congesting things.
Correct. And then why is DAO low? We talked about it. Histamine, it could be histamine from food can build up. Now, this is where people like think about it online. They're like, oh, it's just you got to go on a low histamine diet. Like that's still palliative. No, it's fine because
Mhm.
like, people aren't going to die on a low histamine diet. Like it's not like a medication that kills tens of thousands a year like ibuprofen does, right? So I'm
Mhm.
I'm fine with someone making a diet change because the risk reward ratio isn't that bad. I mean, obviously we want a more variety diet for enjoying life. But if it's causing problems, we want to tighten it up. And so going low histamine can help. So histamine in foods can create
Mhm.
that flushing, the migraine, the anxiety, the heart racing. But the common causes of that low DAO, because DAO is really important to break down the histamine. That's the enzyme, diamine oxidase. That's the enzyme. Gut
Mhm.
inflammation, SIBO, H. pylori, alcohol, sometimes even coffee and tea can be problematic. Zinc, B6, copper, vitamin C. These are all issues that can drive, the root causes of the high histamine.
Yeah, and then even like if we look at environmental or terrain stressors to the gut, are like kind of indirect, but they also affect, which are like mold toxins, heavy metals, chemical exposures, poor sleep, chronic stress load, EMF signalings, those kind of things from an environmental stressor perspective will
Mhm.
absolutely affect your ability to mobilize or to balance histamine in the body.
H. pylori too is a big deal, right? This is a big one because
Mhm.
one, histamine normally actually increases stomach acid, but now um, if you have H. pylori, now it's going to be lowering your stomach acid. And if you have lower stomach acid, now, like you mentioned earlier with putrefaction, now you're not breaking down protein, right? Putrefaction just means the protein's rotting. It's not breaking down, it's fermenting, it's creating gases. When you don't break down your protein and you don't have that good acid, this esophageal sphincter up here, right,
Mhm.
tends to be more loose. And like some of this acid can kind of come up. And then obviously, this gut lining here, you can start to have atrophic gastritis where this gut lining starts to get more thin and then you start to get more ulcerations. And then this acid in here can go up into the esophagus where it's less protected, right? Because the tissue down here is thicker. Think of like you have a thicker callus here. But then now when you start going up here, now there's not a callus. It's like, my fingers have calluses. My right here, my pads and my metacarpals have calluses. But like if I go here or here, there's no callus, right? I can
Yeah,
rub that raw a lot easier. And so there's certain parts of the intestinal tract that just aren't meant to have
yeah.
exposure for that kind of acidity.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people too, you might be looking for things like difficulty swallowing or those kind of things that scar tissue or that sort of building of the callus is increasing. So a lot of people will have with long term either H. pylori or long term esophageal acid reflux will eventually start to have this difficulty, swallowing, or they can have this difficulty swallowing.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of the root causes of dysbiosis? Because dysbiosis is probably one of the biggest driving factors of high histamine. People are thinking like, oh, I need my H1 blockers, which are like my Pepcid AC or my Zantac, or I need my H2 blockers, which are like gonna be like, I think that's gonna be like your Benadryls, or I think
Yeah.
your Zyrtec. I'll go over some of the meds at the end, but your H1 and H2. H1 are
Yeah.
your older ones, right? These are gonna be like your acid reflux ones, like your Zantac, Pepcid AC, Zantac, and I think even Benadryl's one. More tired, those are the bigger side effects. Then you have like kind of your H2 blockers, which are your newer ones that make you less drowsy, but there's still side effects. So can you go more into the
Yeah.
dysbiosis stuff?
Well, I think this is a really good depiction. This is a really good slide to have up, because there's all of these things affect dysbiosis of the gut. So chronic stress is going to do that, right? Because chronic stress is going to shut down your gut function. Your gut function is not going to be optimal, and that gives opportunity for other things like parasitic activity or bacterial overgrowth or things of that nature. From chronic
Mhm.
stress perspective, that's going to lead to those gut infections. We have, of course, the Western diet that you're talking to about there, which is probably better said our food production, how we develop our food here in the West,
Mhm.
that creates a breakdown of my gut, my small intestine. Medications will do that, and those are always masked. I mean, again, histamine is not a histamine issue; it's an overload issue. Histamine's not bad. So, if all we're going to do is block our histamine, there's going to be a downstream effect to that, a weaker system
Bingo.
overall. So, we don't want to just deal with medications long term. Antibiotic use is going to antibio. I always tell my patients, it says antibio means against biology, right? Uh, napalm is antibiotics, right? So essentially, when you take antibiotics, this is what's going on inside of your gut. It's destroying everything. So dysbiosis is easy to create within that environment. Hygiene, I presume we're talking about more like alcohol, the kind of hand alcohol and things like that, or taking in products that have parabens or plastics or things like that that's inside of them. And then, of course, chronic alcohol use, just it's a breakdown. Again, it's another toxin to the body.
100%. And the issue just comes down to is these side effects. There's side effects from these medications if we just use the drugs. So it's very, very important that we try to get to the underlying kind of cause of what's happening. Now, here's a
Mhm.
big thing is the more stressed we are, like this is the reason why people, when they're stressed, they become more sensitive, they have more food allergies, they become more histamine sensitive. It's because the rest and digest helps with relaxing the pupils, right? So pupils will actually constrict. This is actually, you think rest and digest, that like pupils actually would open up wide. It's the opposite, right? Think when you're on a
Mhm.
stimulant like Adderall or cocaine, what happens to the pupils? They actually dilate, right? So
Yeah.
like Adderall stimulants actually, this is why when a police officer goes and looks at your eye and they flash a light, what are they doing? Because your pupils will be stuck in fight or flight, which means open when you're on drugs, especially
Mhm.
stimulants. But when you're normal, it constricts. So then when a cop flashes the light in your eyes, they're looking for this situation here. So you want to see your
Mhm.
light, your eyes constrict. So your hearts are beating nice high beats, good oxygenation. Your lungs are dilated. You have good oxygen. You have good stomach acid, good enzyme production. Your liver's releasing glycogen. It's buffering oxidative stress. It's filtering out all the blood via the hepatic portal
Mhm.
vein. Reproductive wise, you're going to have good GnRH from the hypothalamus, which is going to cause good LH and FSH from the pituitary down to the ovaries or to the
Mhm.
testicles, and you're going to have good hormone production. Your bladder is going to be dialed in. You're going to have good control of your bladder. Think about it. When you get super stressed, what happens? Like to the extreme, you may defecate yourself. You may pee yourself, like with extreme
Yourself.
stress, right? So good, healthy, parasympathetic rest and digest. You're going to have healthier, and then of course it's the opposite over here, where you're going to have problems here. It's going to have relaxation, right? You're going to pee yourself. You're going to have poor reproduction. You're going to have indigestion. You're going to have constriction, heavy breathing. You're going to have rapid heart rate or abnormal rhythm. That's going to be at play.
Mhm.
Comment on
Yeah.
that, Rob?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, right? Your body can't both sort of fight off defenses. It can't be in a fight or flight and a rest and repair at the same time. So when we get caught up in this sort of fight or flight stress response, whether that's chemical, physical, or emotional, biologically we can be put in a stress response as well. But if we're in that space chronically, we are going to be off in our ability to repair, to rest, to digest. All of the things that are essential to rebuild, recycle, and repair my body are going to be downplayed, and that's going to have long-term ramifications that'll end up leading to dysfunction or maybe even disease.
Anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, no, I think, that's really with most of the people that I'm working with, the first thing we will look at, one of the biggest things is their nervous system, how well they're dealing within their nervous system, how well they're dealing with their stressors. Are they chronically anxious? If they are, we can help them out with a few herbs and things of that nature, but also some sort of life support in terms of that. I know brain rewiring, those kind of things are very, very helpful. But essentially, a person that is in fight or flight, the body is not getting the signals to repair. It's getting the signals to survive. And so those are two completely different operating systems. And so when you add on top of that, I have a chronically stressed system, plus I've got histamine overload and I've got infections. All of a sudden, it's very easy to see why somebody can get not just signs and symptoms, but autoimmune dysfunctions, right? Autoimmune disease or cardiovascular disease or any of these other kinds of downstream issues that can be a part of that.
Yep, 100%. Let me show you some of the medications here. So here's the issue with the meds, right? You have two major families of meds. Okay, you're going to have H1 blockers. These are going to be like your Pepcid AC. These are the ones that like used to like in the Benadryl. These are the ones that used to do like more. Actually, it's H1 blockers, I think, are the Benadryl. And then the H2, these are going to be the acid reducers. So if I confuse that, I apologize. So with the H1 blockers, these are like the old school Benadryl. This is where you're going to see more drowsiness, more dizziness, more dry mouth, more blurred vision, more constipation. Where the H2 blockers, you're less side effects, less fatigue, but you will have potentially headaches, diarrhea, constipation, and fatigue, just not as bad. So I'll pull some of these things up. Okay, you can see that on screen. Great. Let me pull these up. All right. So you have your Benadryl. These are going to be your H1 blockers. Okay. These have more side effects. These are your older medications. Then you have so right here, H1. This is your Benadryl, right? This is your diphenhydramine. These are the ones these will be in like your Benadryl or your ZZ Quil, like your Tylenol PM for sedation, and they help with the histamine, right? And then you have the second generation. These are the H2 blockers. These are less sedating. This is loratadine, or Claritin, citrazine or Zyrtec, fexofenadine. This is Allegra. This is going to help with itching or hives or runny nose or flushing. Then you have your H2 blockers, more stomach, right? So this is like more general right here. Now these are your stomach. So this is your Pepcid AC or your Tagamet, right? I think even your Zantac in that too. And so your old ones were just the Allegra, the Benadryl, and then your new ones are these H2 ones, whether it's in the stomach or whether it's kind of more general, the Claritin, Zyrtec, and Allegra. And then how antihistamines actually work, you can see you have the H1 receptor, okay, right here. And then you have the H2 receptor. So the H1s are going to be more in the lungs, the heart, the blood vessels, and the brain. And this is like the old school Benadryl. And then the H2 are going to be in similar spots as well. And then there's even H3 that are out there as well. I'm not sure if there's a medication for this. There probably is. But the mainstream ones that you see over the counter are H1 and H2. And so basically you have this allergen coming in and it's binding to the mast cell, and then you're having all of this histamine release. And so what happens over time, that mast cell can swell. Like let's say this allergen's coming in. Let's say this allergen's gluten. Or let's say it's a bunch of like the dander from your pets or like outside environment. If you lessen that over time, this mast cell can actually swell. Boom, boom, boom. It can actually get bigger. And then when that releases, you have this big bolus of histamine release. But over time, that mast cell will shrink and shrink and shrink, especially as inflammation drops. And so, like, let's say it's an allergen from mold. If you get the mold levels in your house drop, that helps. If you get like the dander and a good air filter in there, like a good HEPA filter with a VOC, like activated charcoal, your air quality is going to help. That's going to have less histamine. Let's say you flush out your sinuses, now less histamine, because now that allergen and antigen, which is here, isn't hanging out in your nose cavity all day. And so there's natural things we can do. And then let's say you pull out the gluten or pull out maybe higher histamine foods, even healthy ones like bacon or coffee or citrus or aged meats, right? That's going to go a long ways to taking this mast cell and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah. When I think it's just on that same note, on that same diagram that you have up, when we talk about like mast cell activation syndrome, I think that was a good diagram of showing like, your mast cells they're just doing what they think they're supposed to be doing, right?
Correct.
When histamine is high, it's congested in the body, they are going to be released just like that. And they're going to do their thing. And it's all environmental. It's because of the environment of the body that's causing that to happen. So if we just give you blockers, it's like, well, that's nice, but it really doesn't deal with any kind of root cause of what's going on. Because if we don't change the terrain of the body, or the amount of histamine or the amount of natural histamine that the body should be producing through DAO, we're going to be in this sort of band-aid approach, and if we're not taking some sort of a medication for it, we're going to have allergen reactions really chronically long term.
Correct. And I kind of talked about the side effects. So we talked about the first gen, right? This is going to be your Benadryl. This is your diphenhydramine, the drowsiness, the brain fog, the dry mouth. Then we have our second gen, right?
Hmm.
So the sertradine, the loratadine, right? Claritin, etc. And then you have your H2 ones, like this is your Pepsid AC. So you can see the different things. Over long term, you're going to have altered microbiome, B12 issues, poor digestion. The problem is, let's say you're on this long term, the side effects, guess what it actually does? It's a positive feedback loop to create more histamine, which
Yeah.
then creates more need for the medication, right? So this is the reason why, like when you're on conventional drugs, that they perpetuate the need for that medication because they alter other systems of the body that when they are altered create more histamine. So
Yeah.
that's why these medications, like when you understand how certain drugs work, they perpetuate the need for that drug ongoing.
Yeah, and that's where the solution becomes a bigger problem, right? So we want
Yep.
solutions that become a lesser problem, not solutions that become a greater problem down the road. And
Correct.
that's exactly what happens in with using medication in many cases.
Yeah, and so quercetin, for instance, is a histamine degranulator. It's going to help degranulate and break down the histamine. Again, it's not fixing the underlying cause. Like, let's say you're having histamine issues because of gut bacteria imbalances or a bunch of like outdoor allergens coming in. Let's say quercetin helps with those symptoms, right?
Mhm.
Is quercetin fixing the underlying cause? No, it's not. It's
Yep.
totally palliative. But when we look at the underlying mechanism and how it works, is the side effect profile better and safer than the medications?
Yeah.
Yes, it is because it's helping to break down the quercetin. Or we're giving some extra vitamin C, which is another way it's a histamine degranulator.
Yeah.
Or we're giving zinc, which helps the immune system and helps the hydrochloric acid. Or we're giving, it's not on here, but I would also say DAO, right? Or we're
Yeah.
giving
Yep.
things like B6 or zinc or more copper. But DAO is also going to be like a natural histamine degranulator in itself. But if we have gut bacteria imbalances, you can see how that's going to be thrown off, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I
And
think
then
kind of
like
the
if go ahead.
oh no, I was going to say the comparison. It looks like you want to say something there about the histamine breakdown.
Yeah. So just in general, the healthier our gut is, and the healthier our digestion is, it's going to help with histamine a ton. And so
Yeah.
it's really easy to be like, oh, he's the natural guy. He's going to recommend this. It's like, yeah, but if I only recommended quercetin or DAO and didn't fix the underlying issue, I'm still practicing allopathic functional medicine.
Allopathic. Yeah. I think that's a big key feature because what I noticed is a lot of people that I see, and I don't know about you, they come from other functional medicine people because
Yes.
they still think they still think sort of palliatively, right? They're not actually getting to root cause. It's sort of like
Correct.
take Advil instead of taking or take white willow bark instead of taking Advil. And it's like, well, why does the
Bingo.
person have a headache in the first place? It could be a
100%.
histamine response. Maybe that's why we got chronic headaches and congestion and those kind of things going on. And if that's what it is, we need to get to the root of that. And I can tell you, and you know this too, so many functional medicine practitioners go to a 3 month, 4 month long course. Their philosophy doesn't change. And instead of using medications, they just use supplementation, but they're not getting to the root cause. So I'm really glad that you brought up the fact that quercetin and these kind of things are not root cause. They're helping you. They're supporting the cause of where we're headed towards dealing with the root cause, but they're not root cause.
Yep, that's important. And so, what's the difference? Antihistamine blocks receptors. It's symptom control. It can reduce stomach acid, temporary relief. Functional approach, it improves the breakdown. If you combine getting to the gut, looking at where the antigens are coming from, fixing the digestion, fixing the bacteria, fixing the autonomic nervous system response. This is why someone's like, "Oh, I
Absolutely.
just took a vacation and like I meditated, I felt so much
Like,
better."
oh,
It's like, yeah,
great.
it's because your nervous system was part of it. Now,
Yeah.
like I look at like we have like our histamine bucket, and so like a stress could be a big component in that bucket. So you
Yeah.
pull that up, that bucket's not overflowing, but gluten could be a big one. Glyphosate could be a big one where
Mhm.
maybe if you made those diet changes, like that vacation wasn't even needed, right? Now, if you do both,
Yeah.
or if you
Yeah.
just,
That's
make sure your daily life is more or less stress or more, you just have more carved out time for you to relax, then maybe that provides a long-term solution.
yeah.
So again, yeah, long-term tolerance. And so we got to look at everything acute versus chronic, and we got to look at getting to the root cause. So big things that we like to look at, all right, are going to be look at your hormones. That tells us about how stressed out our nervous system is. You can get things like, like a Fitbit or like a Whoop or an Oura ring that can give you an HRV or a readiness score that can give you another window into your nervous system.
Yeah.
Getting like a meditation or doing like a DNRS program or Gupta or Is all, there's things I use out called Nerva, which is really good for like gut stress, meditation kind of things.
Yep.
These are good to help your nervous system. Just prayer and meditation and an attitude of
Mhm.
gratitude and appreciation is going to be so helpful. Next, we're going to look at the hormones. We're going to look at the adrenals. We're going to look at the female hormones. I didn't go into this, but low progesterone can also increase histamine sensitivity because progesterone is a natural
Mhm.
antihistamine. So the more stressed we are, the more that progesterone drops and the more women become estrogen dominant, that's actually going to
Yeah.
cause more histamine sensitivity. So fixing the female hormones, fixing the male hormones are going to help a lot. Next, looking at the gut, because we know gut bacteria, especially bad bugs like Citrobacter, Pseudomonas, Klebsiella, Morganella proteus,
Mhm.
H. pylori, even Candida, they're going to actually produce histamine. And if that histamine continues to fill up our bucket, because it's endogenous, meaning it's coming from within. So we have exogenous from like food, environment, mold, allergens, and then we have endogenous is what our body's making internally. And so getting to the root of the endogenous histamine is a big deal. So we'll look at gut testing for that, and that can be helpful. And we'll even want to look at organic acid can be helpful because we can have fungal overgrowth or colonize mold or colonize fungus in our body
Mhm.
from different like aspergillus or fusarium or penicillium molds too. So a good organic acid test can also look at that too. And sometimes we'll even run a urinary mycotox to see like what the environmental load is from like different mycotoxins, either inside or outside the house coming in, and we can test that in the urine. So those are a couple of tests that we'll look at to get a window. Now you can do things like serum tryptase or like um, histamine urine or serum test. That's helpful, but if we have histamine symptoms, we
Yeah.
probably are going to have that histamine in our body. So it doesn't really tell us where or what. It kind of just
Yeah.
confirms what we already know. And so those testing, some people like it, but for me, it doesn't really get to the underlying issue. And then, of course, I missed one medication. There's a medication out there called Chromalin, which is another medication, but that's like for the extreme kind of like mast cell disorder, right? You have different mast cell disorders out there that people will go to like the more serious drugs on it. But in the end, like these mast cell disorders, right? That's going to be MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome.
Yep.
It's everything that we're talking about, just more chronic and more long term. It's the mold, it's the gut, it's the hormones, it's the environment, it's the glyphosate, it's the gut
It's
permeability, it's
everything. Yeah.
everything. And so when people like come up with these fancy names like MCAS or mast cell disorder, it's just everything we're talking about just stacking up,
Amplified.
amplified.
Yeah, it's just the amplification, and it usually reaches farther and more distal to the body. Like everything's on fire, and that's where it gets really scary for people. I think is when they sort of
Bingo.
they're normal all of a sudden, and then they're just overnight. Seemingly for some of these people, they blow up, right? And I was
Yep.
working with this gal Julie, and that was her situation where she was just totally fine, blew up, didn't know what was going on, had rashes everywhere, had inflammation everywhere, she had itching everywhere, and she had no idea what was going on. And then some people, you know, more on the lower grade level will just deal with these things long term, and they don't realize they have this chronic infection going on that's causing this mast cell issue or this histamine bucket
Correct.
overload issue. And all of this stuff can be absolutely reversible. It's just understanding first and foremost that it is by understanding what it actually what's going on in the body.
Correct. And I think the easiest things out of the gate is good high quality HEPA, air filter, VOC. There's a couple that we like. We'll
Yeah.
put links down below. Get rid of all your plastics for your food, right? Store it in Pyrex. Have a good clean canteen, Yeti, kind of surgical grade stainless steel for your water during the day. No Glade plugins, no Febreze, no little trees in your car, no dryer sheets. Use a free and clear detergent like an all or seventh generation. Use wash soda to help get out stains and remove smells and odors. Flush out your sinuses if you have allergy issues. Start with the simple things that are just kind of like once they're part of your life, they're just kind of set it and forget it. It's not even like your food. It's not even like sleep. It's just getting your environment kind of plugged in because that's like a huge component. You go into someone's home
Mhm.
and like I mean, I go to my home and there's one neighbor near me that I can just smell their dryer sheets from like 100 yards away. And I'm like, man, imagine if you're like wearing the clothes that are saturated in those dryer sheets all day long. Like that is just crazy to me.
Yeah,
Like
when
it's
I
just
go back
lighting up your
to
immune system.
New Mexico and even parts of the South, it's like pretty much everything. Everything smells like a ton of fragrance in the air, right? Like even admittedly so, I have to get on my wife every once in a while. I told her to try this sea salt spray. and she was utilizing the sea salt spray for her hair. And she's like, I don't like it. I want the real stuff. And I'm like, you got to make a decision. If you're doing this every single day, it's going to affect you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Like they will affect you.
And that goes for colognes and perfumes and females. If you want like a gentle smell, you can do a lavender or a rose. Or guys, if you want something, you can do a sandalwood or I think it's cedar. There's one like that. There's a couple that are pretty good. Frankincense is a great one for guys too. It's kind of a pretty neutral one. If you want like a gentle scent, you can do that, or even just a nice citrus.
Or just search like essential oils. I think there's even companies now making this stuff that are clean companies that are making essential oil fragrances.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy because like people's scents and fragrances, it should be like if you get like really close to me, like you can get like a hint of it. Like if you're in my bubble. But then you have ones where like someone walks by and you feel totally crop dust. You're like, what just happened? Like, oh my gosh. And so I think that's like a cultural thing where it's like, okay, like, less is more. Less is more.
Yeah. I think some people just can't even smell it on themselves. They've done it for so long and it's like, it's just the way that they roll.
Oh, I remember like when I was like 20 years old and like I didn't shower for a day. I remember getting the Axe spray and I would just like shh and just walk into it, right? Yep. And I'm just like, man, like what was I ever thinking? That was terrible. But you live, you learn.
That was like a little bit of a background story from times at UMass.
Yeah, exactly.
before going up, putting on some sprays and smelling nice and going out with the Italian stallion.
I know. But in the end, it's like that stuff's so bad for you. And so now I just kind of have like my nice deodorant that's got some activated charcoal and baking soda, maybe a little hint of citrus or a little hint of maybe lime in there, something like very, very gentle. And that's it. That very, very little outside of that.
And they do like sandalwood. Sandalwood is good.
Sandalwood, that's the other one. Sandalwood's really nice. Yeah, I like it. And so there's gentle stuff like that you can do. Or frankincense is great because it's very anti-inflammatory. So if you have, let's say you're a pain around your neck, you can just massage it right into your neck and you'll get some of that gentle fragrance too. So I think we hit all the big stuff here today. Anything else you want to highlight, Rob?
Yeah, I think just core understanding of like, number one, I think kind of just speaking to the audience. So if you guys are dealing with this histamine issues or you suspect that you are, I mean, these are chronic inflammatory markers. Most people have a sense something is off. And number one, I think some people think it's a life sentence. It's not.
Nope.
Absolutely reversible. And some people just don't know where to start at all. They're totally confused about it. And if you are, both of us are available, of course, like Dr. Justin is talking about. He's justinhealth.com. I'm heritagehealth.life. And we're here to help you guys, walk you through this stuff. And we go low and slow. We work with your body. Obviously, everything we do is foundational. We're testing, not guessing, even though your body is giving us clues. And I think this is a good podcast.
And I'll put the links for Rob's website here, heritagehealth.life, link down below, and myself, justinhealth.com. Feel free to reach out. We see patients all over the world. We'll only take you on if we feel like you're a good fit and we can help. We have too many patients. We only want success stories. So if you're a good fit, we'll take you on. So feel free and reach out. Anything else, please put comments down below. And if you're enjoying the podcast or someone can benefit that in your family or friend circle, please feel free and share it. We want to empower people. Probably most people that listen to this, we won't even work with them, right? Because it's getting to thousands of people. But if people can apply the information, even just one or two things, they're going to get much healthier and they'll still benefit. We appreciate that. All right, guys, you have an awesome day.